G'day guys, this is Draymond here. Had a bit of an idea as to how to get like a space station map working, but it is quite difficult, and I didn't really get this one working as well as I'd hoped to, but yeah, it's a concept at the very least. I'm positive it's not the way that it's meant to be done. It's definitely a way of faking it, but yeah, it might inspire you to get something working. So this is going to take a fair bit of trial and error to get right. To start off with, and to make things easier, I'm going to set the ground height around about where I want everything kind of floating up in the sky. This is mainly just to give me a surface to start placing stuff on, and then when I'm finished I'll drop the ground height back to 0 and everything should stay in place up in the sky, providing you manually modify the height of each object instead of letting it snap to the ground. So just to start off with, I've set my terrain height to 100. I'll start placing objects and set up a bit of a basic setup, and then drop the terrain height and see if we can get everything to stay up in the sky when I launch the game. Just going to use the space station floors to start off with, just so I know that I can get it working, and then can go and add detail after that. Set my spacing to 16 and I'll just copy and paste them around until I've got a nice little grid. So you may not be able to see it, but I've put the floor panels at the same height as the ground. I'm going to decrease the ground height now just to check that the floor panels are staying in place. Then I can undo with Ctrl Z and keep working. Using floors in this way will make it difficult to select the rest of the objects, so I can use the selection filter to help remove the floor from the possible selection. You'll see what I mean. So if I enable filter and we're looking to remove floor, I'll just type in floor and invert selection, and that should mean that the floor is no longer going to come up in my selection. I can just uncheck this to be able to grab the floor again. So I've finished putting in a little bit of detail. It's pretty ugly and basic, but you kind of get the idea. Now, like I said, this is a way to fake having it floating in the sky. So to hide the ground, I'm going to use this sky star field. If I place that down and select it, there we go. Increase the height, and there goes the ground. So yeah, it is pretty ugly. The star field is quite, like the texture's quite zoomed in because we've got to raise it so high. It's not great, but I mean, it's something. Short of the devs actually letting us know how they hid their terrain mesh or made it transparent or even removed it, I think we're just going to have to come up with ways that fake it and that hide the ground, or you know, things like that. I mean, there's probably a few different ways you could do this. It's all just about being creative and hiding things as much as possible. Well, it looks like something's gone wrong there. Sometimes, if not most of the time, when I try and get stuff working, it generally doesn't. So I'll leave this in as a bit of an example of trial and error. So what's happened is I've set the camera height at 200, and I assume the game just doesn't like it. It's defaulted back to the default camera height, which is quite low. Yeah, there we go. This is probably what the default camera height should look like, with the declination and field of view settings I've put in. So we're going to have to do this a little bit differently. Yeah, so I forgot to hit record before when I was fixing the camera height, so I'm just going to have to do this with a new map. I think I spoke about finding that shift changes your brush size, so if I hold shift and drag, that's a quick handy way of changing the brush size. But I'm just going to set it to max, get rid of feather, set value, and the terrain height we were using was 100. And just going to drag that around the whole map. Now something unfortunate with this is your camera mesh doesn't actually have a visible mesh. You can see the brush circle kind of disappearing down as I move the mouse. So really you just kind of got to try and get every spot and be thorough. The last thing you want is the camera kind of dropping into the abyss as it hits a bit of a bump in the camera mesh. But this is pretty much all I did to fix the camera issue. Once you've set the camera mesh height, then you can just use regular camera properties to set up the camera. So there we go. As you can see, using the camera mesh has worked a hell of a lot better than setting some obscene camera height. Still got a little bit of zoom out left on there as well. And I forgot to add the star field. Alright, I'll be right back. So as you can see, we have a star field now, but the fog of war with the default settings makes it particularly ugly. So going to have to play around with that to get it looking a little bit nicer. Fog of war settings are found under scenario and atmosphere properties. Fog drop down box, and I think distance fog start, currently at 64. If I turn that up to, well, we're at height 100, so if I set that to 100, I think that means the fog will just start at the ground, but I'm probably wrong. I don't think that looks any better. It may even look worse, to be honest. So it's definitely not the fog start near camera setting. Hey, there's an idea. How about we enable fog so that we can actually test and view it in the editor? Oh gosh, alright. I'll have a play around with this and see if I can come up with any decent settings. Okay, so volumetric fog looks to be a whole additional fog, and by default it's disabled, so just ignore these other two sliders here. This ground height factor seems to be of the most effect. So it looks like wherever the camera is in its Y coordinate, so not like its focal point where it's looking, but where if you were just to drop a line directly below the camera, that's the camera point this is referring to. So if I increase and decrease this, you'll see the hole directly underneath the camera changing. And if I increase the second value, you see, or decrease it rather, you see there's kind of like a secondary line coming in, and then everything in between is just a gradient of no fog and absolute fog. Still doesn't really help because it's producing some ugly effects, but it's good to know regardless. This might end up just working better without fog entirely. Although I'm not sure that this is the same fog as our fog of war. So in the edit fog color and gradient menu, if I select the end point, alpha of 0 basically means transparent. So if I up the alpha and hit apply, you'll see, well, that's no longer transparent, that's solid. and the outer ring of fog for the camera has now got the solid colour, and the colour is this one over here, so I could effectively set that to whatever I wanted and it would apply that colour there. So I think for space we're kind of just looking for a bit of a dark haze. Okay, I think I'm well and truly fogged out for the moment. It's definitely something that's going to take a lot of playing around with to get something that I'm happy with, and I kind of just don't like it in general. So I'm just going to leave it at that and have a look at what it looks like in game. So it looks like this attempt has kind of failed worse than I originally thought. I can't move across these floor tiles, I'm assuming because they're not like walkway tagged or something. So I don't know, I think getting a map like this working would be a major nightmare. I still think it's doable using this method, as much as it would just absolutely suck to try and make one like this. But doable, but yeah. So if you want to have a go, here's a bit of an idea as to how you might throw one together, but I mean, geez, I hope you have more luck than I've had. Yeah. What it'll come down to is having the correct floor tiles that you can move troops around on, maybe even using some terrain mesh where the kind of giant piers of terrain coming up to the height won't be visible or be hidden by other objects, and a lot of trial and error. So I'll leave it at there. I think this idea is kind of great in theory and going to be very difficult in practice. As I said before, hope you have better luck than I've had. And yeah, thanks for watching.